Adam, 63-61, the final score Saturday in what is now called the Lenovo Center in Raleigh. Carolina gets the win. It was not real pretty. The first half was bad. It was bad basketball. State couldn't shoot in the first half. It was 9 of 40, 1 of 12 from three. Carolina was having turnover problems in the first half. Tar Heels shot below 40%, 2 of 9 from three, and had 7 turnovers in that first half. There just weren't many fouls called. What were there? 7 fouls called, I think, total in the first half, and that just allowed the game to be very, very physical, very, very messy. Lots of challenges at the rim. Some of them were impressive blocks. Some of them were like tackles that just were allowed to go. So it was just a very physical, messy game in the first half. Carolina led by 6 at halftime. And then in the second half, it was better basketball. Both teams played better. State shot really well, shot 60%. Carolina shot 49 or 48%, but hit 5 of 10 from three-point range. That played a big role. The Tar Heels really struggled early in keeping State off the glass, but mitigated that and eventually actually won the rebounding battle 40-38. The offensive rebounds somehow were close to even after State had 8 offensive rebounds in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. They ended up with 16. Carolina had 13 for the game. Individually, we mentioned Jaylen Washington. His best game as a Tar Heel, 11 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks, including the game-winning or game-deciding block. That's 12 blocks for him now in the last 3 games. First career double-double. And Ian Jackson was, again, great. Had 16 points in the second half, 21 for the game, 5 of 8 from 3, and hit some big three-pointers in that second half in particular. So, Adam, it was just a grinded-out first half, a little better in the second half. Carolina led a large majority of this game. I mean, Carolina led for almost 29 minutes of the action, led by 9 a couple of times in the second half. It looked like Carolina was threatening to pull away up 8 or 9 with about 5 or 6 minutes left, then got called for 5 consecutive fouls, which allowed State to come back, to get back in it, some at the line and some with some really good shooting. Hubert Davis with us on the Tar Heel Sports Network after the game said whatever it takes, and that's what Carolina did. Just found a way, whatever it takes, just get out of there with more points. And fortunately for the Tar Heels, that's what happened.
Someone suggested this scenario to me today, and I feel that this is the only way I possibly could have enjoyed this game more. What if they had called goaltending on Jaylen Washington's block?
Yeah, which I don't think it was, by the way.
Of course it wasn't.
Yeah.
But then reviewed it and overturned it. I think that's the only scenario I can imagine that would have been more fun and more devastating to everyone wearing red, which is always my goal. Other than that, great game from Jaylen Washington. I mean, we've talked on here before about how from time to time the Tar Heels have not executed what the game plan that was installed very effectively. This game, I thought they did. They did a pretty good job keeping State out of the paint. It helped that the Pack didn't have Brandon Huntley-Hatfield. But Middlebrooks draws fouls at a higher rate than almost anyone in the ACC. And Carolina talked a lot about that, and he only shot 1 free throw. And now, granted, it was hard to shoot free throws in this game because you had to have a whistle blow before you could shoot the free throw. But still, that's his game. And Carolina kept him from doing that. They kept them from scoring effectively in the paint, and that enabled them to win the game.
This game was very, very physical, Adam, and I don't know if it necessarily benefited one team more than the other. Carolina only shot 8 free throws the entire game. There were only 20 free throws taken, and 11 of those were by State in the second half. So it was very physical. And I will say, I didn't realize it until I went and looked back. Carolina had back-to-back turnovers late in the game where Cadeau had back-to-back turnovers. There were fouls on both of those plays. Jaylen Washington, the play that was just dumbfounding to me in real time, Cadeau threw the ball from the perimeter into the middle of the paint, and there was nobody there but a State player. I think Dontre Styles intercepted it. Well, the reason nobody was there is Ben Middlebrooks had grabbed Jaylen Washington's arm and just slung him down on the baseline. There was no whistle. The next play, Cadeau tried to drive in and gets pulled to – I mean, again, I didn't notice it in real time, but somebody just grabbed his forearm and pulled him to the ground. So – and I'm sure there were plays like that on the other side too. I'm not suggesting there weren't. But these two in particular just stood out to me as at the time you thought, boy, these are really bad plays by Elliot Cadeau in particular. And I don't think they really were. I think there were fouls on both plays. But so what I will say to that is I thought it was good for Carolina to not back down in a physical game. I still think Carolina – for the end of time, has this reputation as being a team that doesn't like it that way. And good to see Jaylen Washington go toe-to-toe in a physical game. Ian Jackson doesn't care about that at all. He's just going to go and try to shoot it in your face or dunk it on you. R.J. Davis has proven through the years he's a tough little nut. He's going to take a big hit and come right back. And so, I mean, but it was good for Carolina. I thought this was a different type of game than Carolina's played a lot this year. There have been some games like this, Georgia Tech a little bit, and maybe some others. But for Carolina to win a game like this, I thought was beneficial.
And on a second watch, I thought Cadeau was a lot better than I thought he was the first watch.
And he ended up with 11 assists.
11 assists.
They adjusted the box score right after he was credited with 9, and then pretty quickly after the game, they sent out an amended box score and gave him 11. So I don't know where they found the other two, but he's been good against NC State in his short career. Didn't have a great game in the ACC championship game last year, but none of the Tar Heels really did. But in the regular season, he had terrific numbers, and his numbers, he didn't shoot well in this game, but his assist to turnover, 11-3. And again, 2 of those turnovers were the 2 we just told you, which I don't think he should not have been. But yes, his numbers were pretty good.
I think the way we keep them on Elliot Cadeau in this game would have been more like 15 or 16. But even the ones he got credit for, like there was one cross-court pass to Ian Jackson when I don't know how he saw Ian Jackson over there.
When he hit the 3 in the corner? And he didn't get an assist on that?
No, I'm saying the ones he did get credit for, like that one.
Okay.
Just the way he passed the ball in this game, and he didn't shoot it very well. Or do some of the other offensive things that we know he can do. But just the way he passed it in a kind of grimy game was really important for Carolina and getting good shots.
And, of course, he had the assist to Jaylen Washington on the final play or final offensive play for Carolina. I thought that was a heads-up play because whatever Carolina was trying to do, it got a little disrupted. Cadeau kind of, I don't know if he lost his footing or the ball he didn't kind of fumble the ball a little bit. And Middlebrooks was trying to tie him up, and Cadeau just fought away from him. And really nice play to find Jaylen Washington, who was, since Middlebrooks had gone to try and tie up Cadeau, was free. Cadeau ripped it away, found him. Washington gets the dunk. It was a nice play.
And we'll hear Jaylen Washington talk about this, I'm sure. But heads-up play by Washington to keep moving. I mean, he didn't just stand there once he was open. He moved to where he was more open, which I'm not sure if a couple of years ago he does that just from the lack of game time he had. But because he has played more minutes and just is more in the flow, he knew where the spot was. He knew where Cadeau could deliver it, and that turned into the game-winning basket.
I want to talk about Jackson and Washington, but let's talk about the end-of-game sequence first. First of all, State should have been called for a violation on the inbound. Dontre Styles, who we like, former Tar Heel, been here on the pod, but he moved significantly on a spot throw-in. Adam has more information on this coming up later in the show. Should have been a violation, but whatever. Hubert Davis, in the timeout that was taken by NC State, took out Ian Jackson and put in Seth Trimble, and that turned out to be we all know Seth Trimble's a great defender, and Seth Trimble, wouldn't let Marcus Hill get the ball. And Marcus Hill is State's leading scorer and had been the most effective player for State in this game. He took 19 shots and had 20 points and 9 rebounds. So he had a great game. And Trimble wouldn't let him be the guy that took the shot to try and tie the game. He just wouldn't let him get it. And so that was a really quality roster move there by Coach Davis. Again, I think we all understand Trimble is the best defender, but you still got to make that move. And Carolina did it, got him in there, and he played a big role on that final play. Carolina did a nice job switching some action by State on the perimeter. Cadeau challenged the shot on the ball by Parker, who took the shot or Taylor. They've got Parkers and Taylors all over the place at State. Jaden Taylor, who took the last shot, and then, as we referenced earlier, maybe if this was the Wolfpack Insider, we would say, well, Adam wouldn't be on there if it was, but we would think it was a goaltend. I'm not even sure the ball had even gotten above the rim. Like it was a pretty clean block in my opinion, and a demonstrative block by Jaylen Washington. And then kind of a weird final seconds. Washington blocked it. It like bounced off Drake Powell's like head or shoulders or something right back into the hands of Jaylen Washington with 2 seconds left or something. And everybody just decided they'd stand there until the clock ran out. So, hey, Tar Heels will take it.
In no way was that a goaltend.
Yeah, nah.
Come on, guys. That wasn't a goaltend. A good final sequence. We've seen Carolina need to make some of those plays in that very same situation and not been able to do it. And this time they did, both offensively and defensively. And I think that's a sign of progress. Are you going to do it every time? No. But they look like they had the right people in the right places to do the right things, which is the point they've been trying to get to this whole year. And it worked out.
Adam Ian Jackson, 21 points. As seems to happen every year, somebody asked him about rivalry with State, and he was like, oh, is that our rival or something? And it's like, then, of course, from the 8 members of the local media, that became like a big deal. And Ian Jackson looked a little anxious at the beginning of the game. He airmailed a 3-pointer on the first possession or two for Carolina. He did not play great defense early in the game and was subbed out because of it a couple of times, and had 5 points at halftime. But then Ian Jackson came back and was the absolute best player on the floor in the second half and had 16 in the second half, hit 4 3-pointers in that second half, all from about the same spot on the court, where he was finding a really comfortable spot on the right sideline and was just burying dagger 3 after 3. Got out in transition a couple of times, played better defense to let him stay on the floor, and was the guy that we have become accustomed to, one of the best players, certainly one of the best freshmen in the league, and there's, as we know, a lot of good freshmen this year. But he's one of the best players in the league, and, man, he showed it again in this game. Just some huge shots.
I could see from where we were through my telescope
that
when he started making some shots, he had this big smile on his face. I think you could see it on TV a couple times too, and I wondered what that was about. And what I've learned is the first State game in Raleigh after I retire, I'm going to go over to whatever they're calling it then, the L Center, which is what it is now, and I'm going to watch the game with Tyler Zeller's wife, Caitlin, and Ian Jackson's good friend who from New York who was at the game on Saturday. Because that guy, it sounds like, is awesome and had sort of a running commentary going from behind the Tar Heel bench that I think Ian Jackson really enjoyed, and I think I would have enjoyed being part of it. And so the three of us are going to go over there and just watch the Tar Heels play NC State, and we're going to all sit together. And hopefully, well, I don't think Ian Jackson will still be on the team at that point. It seems unlikely.
Be awesome if he was.
But if he was, I hope he's playing like he did Saturday, because I do think there's something to, like, we've seen guys go over to places like Raleigh, hostile environments, and you miss a couple shots early and they're done. Ian Jackson didn't care. I'm not even sure he remembers that he missed those shots. I don't think he even knows he took them, and if he does, he thinks they went in. He doesn't care. And what did Theo Pinson tell us several years ago? You need that dude who doesn't remember what happened and doesn't really care.
Yeah, wise words from Theo Pinson. You just need that guy who, no matter what has happened in the game, at any point in time, he wants the ball and is willing to fire it up because he thinks it's going in. That is Ian Jackson. And the great news is it goes in a lot.
Yeah.
Adam, the other individual here, of course, is Jaylen Washington, and we've talked about him a little bit. But this was a physical game. This was a game that he could have said, well, they're not blowing any whistles, and Middlebrooks is big and strong, and this just isn't the type of game that is conducive to my skill set. But Jaylen Washington, and Vinal Lubin the same way, although he didn't have as much success, but was in the mix. And that, to me, has been the biggest change for these big guys, Adam, in the last couple of games, is they're just willing to be in it, in the fight. And Washington was battling for rebounds, blocking shots, not just the last one. He had 3 blocks in this game. That's been a big change over the last couple of games, is Carolina having a legitimate rim protector. Even hit a little baseline jump shot, kind of the old Jaylen Washington, hit 3 or 4 at the free throw line. I mean, he's developing, he's growing, and the talent level has never been in question. I think the question has been, could he become more consistent, and could he get to the point that he could mix it up with other big guys in the paint? Now, doesn't mean it's going to happen on Wednesday against Cal, because that growth process is still occurring, but you're starting to see it more often. And I do think if he has similar games to this game, it just raises Carolina's ceiling this year. It gives them a legitimate post player who gives you a lot of things down low.
And when you put he and Vinal and Lubin's numbers together, again, you get a viable post presence. If that was one player, you would say, oh, Carolina's in great shape in the post. We're not at the point where you can just write down Jaylen Washington's stats every game and go, all right, he's going to get you 10 points and 10 rebounds and block 3 shots every single time. We're not there yet, but I think he has done it now at least 3 games in a row where he's given you kind of what you expect. That's a good sign. That consistency is something that's hard to do. It's easier to do it one time, and then you go, wow, man, I'm awesome. And then it's tougher the next time out. You see a lot of different matchups in the ACC because there's so many different teams. You're playing so many different opponents. I think you got to credit Sean May for the work he's done with them. We'll hear Jaylen, I'm sure, talk about some of the other folks who have been important in that development. But what a nice moment where it's like old-fashioned player development. He came in as a freshman, and he hadn't basically played in 2 years because of injuries.
And because you're talking about when he got here, he hadn't played in a couple years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then he was behind Armando Bacot, who you're not going to displace for 2 years. But look, now he's gotten better and improved, and he's a key part of this team that is not what it could be yet, but he at least gives them a higher ceiling. That version of Jaylen Washington means Carolina could be better than what we thought they were a month ago.
So, again, Tar Heels win it 63-61. Just last thing, Adam, for me, the rotation is becoming pretty clear. 8 guys played in this game, and it seems like the Tar Heels are rolling with 8 guys right now. The starting 5, which at the moment has been Cadeau, Davis, Jackson, Powell, Washington, and then Seth Trimble, Vinal Lubin, and Jalen Withers playing off the bench. Cade Tyson has not played in the last 2 games. Ty Claude has not played, I think, in the last 3 games for Carolina. And that doesn't mean, I think we talked about this some the other day, I can't remember. That doesn't mean that they're not going to play again, of course. But it seems like Carolina feels like it's found its best combinations at the moment for what they feel like can help them be successful.
And even Withers, I think, just 4 minutes on Saturday and none in the second half.
Correct.
But I also think maybe that's the best use of him. Like, sometimes he's had some adventures late in games. And so if you have players you feel better about at those junctures, if he can give you some minutes to rest those other guys early in the game, that's a plus. I still think there's going to be a game where Cade Tyson hits 3 or 4 or 5 threes. I hope it's in Durham. But I still think that's going to happen. I think he does enough things that he's going to be helpful at some point. But it's hard to argue with this current rotation right now because the SMU game was about the best Carolina's looked, And this was a difficult road game that was losable and most definitely would have been lost a month ago.
Yeah.
So as you found this rotation, you've picked up a couple of good wins. You got a chance to get a couple more this week. I can't imagine thinking, let's tinker with this a little more and see if we can do even better. I don't think it's the time.
So the Heels when they improved to 11-6 and 4-1 in conference play.